Hello, everybody. My name is Kevin Connor. I am owner and operator of the GAB 501c3 registered nonprofit. I thought I'd discuss something of a topic that was brought up in one of my favorite educational groups on Facebook, and it deals with entertainment. And as you well know, I believe that education and conservation can be facilitated by entertainment and fantasy. It's a comic book editor group, and they're often very intelligent, thought out, wonderful topics and communications between those in the industry. This particular topic is about punctuation on a comic page. And after reading some responses, I thought this would be a great chance to discuss the topic for the GEB nonprofit website, wherever you may find this video. I have a history of debate and English prep, tutoring, education, editing in various ways for about 25 years. Punctuation in creative English is malleable. This is not true with technical writing. That's because technical writing is dictated by legal standards, usually after having been tried in court. English punctuation marks in creative presentation represent a verbal beat and breath taken, as well as the tone of voice of the speaker. This is a summary of decades of research into the history of the English language. And a lot of this can be found in one of my favorite guides of all time, the Warner's English Grammar and Composition, pre-1980 and 1990 mergers. There are other books that are just as fantastic. Their names just tend to escape me. I believe that Long and Schutz has a full English grammar and composition book of their own, or at least I believe they did. I'm not sure if it's in print anymore. The reason why I specify getting one of these books before the 1980s and 1990s is that after the great big publishing mergers, these publishing companies decided they could make more money by releasing small, compact books rather than comprehensive books. Copywriting those, along with intentional mistakes or revisions, removals, additions, etc. And yeah, it is kind of disappointing that that practice began with these mergers. But the great thing is, a lot of these books, especially Warner's, you can see they are available everywhere for reasonable prices. And it's always good to have a hard copy of them on your desk. And yet, these are all out of print, so I'm not making a dime off of them. I'm just advocating a great resource. Of course, if you find a great resource for you, look for them. And look for the unabridged full editions. They're usually about 2 or 3 inches thick. 5.5 by 8 inches in size. The rules which I often seen cited are usually from BBC Standard, Canadian Editorial Standards, Chicago, MLA, AP, Reuters, etc. Those style guides are for technical writing. They're not for creative writing. A lot of editors in the industry get technical certifications too. And that's not bad. Technical writing is fantastic. And yes, you can edit a creative work using technical editing standards. There's nothing wrong with that if that's how you believe the product will be best presented to the public, and if that is indeed how the public best receives that product. That's the wonderful thing about English, because you do have a lot of choices. For creative works, though, I prefer to focus on creative editing. And that's what we're here to discuss. In fact, we're here to discuss this particular image. 2 panels, single page of a comic. And the discussion is about punctuation in these 3 balloons. So I'd like to give you a chance to look at it. I will read it as monotone as possible, and then give you different readings based off of different punctuations and what the punctuations mean. I don't even know what this place is. Why should we live here? I'm taking all of these. Can I put them in your cart? Fine, but you're pulling the cart for a while. That's my best monotone reader impersonation that I can give you. Let's start with the first balloon. There are 3 things going on here in the entire panel. 1, body language. Her eyes are to her left. She has a tilted head. Her mouth is slanted. Look at that image of this character. I say this as someone who has had courses and studied body language. This is not the position of an individual who is making a flat statement. It is a position of curiosity, an inquisitive position. Now, this can also be in direct relationship to her inquisitive follow-up. Number 2, tonal shift in the writing without situational change. Let's discuss this topic. Humans do not do tonal shift with connecting thoughts very well without an emergency prompt. That is basically like, oh, I hate you. Oh no, somebody's going to get hit by a car. That's a tonal shift caused by an emergency prompt. I was being angry and oh, you, and then I immediately go, oh, someone's going to get hit by a car. That shift comes from an emergency that I noticed that interrupted my current tone and introduced a completely new tone and body language to my understanding of the surroundings. That is a typical reason and the majority reason for a tonal shift in a conversation. A lot of people like to make fun of a movie called The Room. I'm not sure if you've seen it or not. It was an independent production, and the individual who I can't remember their name now. I feel so unprofessional. All right, Tommy Wiseau. That's his name. Tommy Wiseau has this thing where he has an immediate tonal shift, and it's a joke. It's not a joke in the movie. It's become a joke because of the tonal shift and how abnormal it really is. He's saying, I did not hurt her. I did not hit her. I did it. Oh, hi, Mark. If you've ever seen the, oh, hi, Mark, that's the scene. He's talking about, I didn't attack her. I didn't do that. Oh, hi, Mark. It's jarring. It doesn't fit well with your understanding of the situation. It doesn't fit well with anything else. So a lot of people, because it's an unexpected event, a chaotic event, a lot of people laugh. Oh, hi, Mark. We've all done something like that in our lives. It's not common. And you can even say that that is another example of an emergency interruption or an emergency prompt. Mark is the emergency, essentially. Not really emergency, but, like a startling or event of some kind. And he goes from defending himself, Tommy goes from defending himself to say, oh, hi, Mark. because he is given a reason for that tonal shift. Humans do not do tonal shift with connecting thoughts very well without an emergency prompt. Basically is the context here. It's difficult. So there has been a suggestion that it's best to replace the question mark in the first sentence with a period, which then follows a second sentence with a tonal shift and a question mark. To change the first sentence to a period while carrying on the connecting thought into a question is extremely difficult to pull off naturally. It may be how some people write, but it is not how some people speak. This further prompts the question of the intent of the writing and the reading. Should there be a tonal shift? Should you have an inquisitive marker for both? Should you have a period for both? Should you have a comma and end with a question? In addition, I'd also like to say that should there be a pause? If you have a pause, you've got a great tonal shift, in which case you would break up the balloon from one, maybe up on top and then to another in order to better represent the tonal shift. All three factors, or four factors, should be taken into consideration. There is no wrong, as I explain in number 3. 3, punctuation with character. As you may know, there are rhetorical, implied, implicit statements and questions. These are grammatical structures which are dictated by the context of the situation. In this situation, you see the context of her behavior being one of self-doubt, confusion, curiosity, and I put self-doubt again. But it is true, because you do have self-doubt appearing twice. Self-doubt. Don't something. Or I don't something. That is self-doubt. If you say I don't, you're giving doubt to what you do, or it's some sort of statement, negative statement. Confusion. Know something. I don't even know. Curiosity. Why do is something, or why do / is something. Why would, that's a curiosity. Self-doubt, again. I do is something. We live. So what you have in the first sentence is, I don't even know what this place is. I don't and know. That's a statement of, I'm confused. This is not, I'm absolutely not into knowing this thing here, which then continues to, why would we live here? Why, curiosity, self-doubt, I do, would we, would is do, essentially, same sort of action. Why we live here? So you've got these issues as part of the context of her behavior, encapsulated within a single balloon. So there's no real tonal shift there. They are strong indicators of implied and implicit questions. 2 are in the first, 2 are in the last. This means these two sentences are complementary to each other in both tone and structure. Only if you correct that question mark to be a period, the first one would have a period and the second one would have a question mark. That's when you have to decide which tone you are setting and whether or not the punctuation will enhance that tone or contradict that tone. For this particular panel, I tend to fall on the side of either 1, the punctuation of both sentences should follow and set the intonation of the sentence, the literal meaning to be in tone with the voice of the character. That is intonation. 2, the punctuation of both sentences should be anti-tonal with the sentence, thus providing an almost sarcastic / sardonic or even wit-driven tone, which could be directed at herself. There's also the third option of combining the sentences, as they do represent a single thought. The intonation would be a rising pitch for the first two sentences if inquisitive, down if a statement or judgment. The second panel is all about breathing power and pacing. Commas, so let's move down to the second panel there. Commas literally mean when you take a short breath. Periods literally mean when you take a long breath. That is the only reason those things exist. Now, we have constructed some rules with a lot of exceptions in order to try and explain them in technical ways, which is required for technical editing. But the reality is both comma and period represent your breathing and how much space you're given. These short and long breaths usually match up with complete and incomplete thoughts. Complete thoughts, or independent clause structures, are not necessarily whole sentences. There is no rule in the English language that dictates sentences are solely for singular independent clause structures. None. It may be a convention in some styles, but there is no actual rule that says that. In fact, 99% of the literature out there is full of independent clause structures smacked together with a comma, a colon, a semicolon, parentheses, parens, and at all. Hyphens. Even with technical writing, you often have to combine independent clauses to form single sentences for the purpose of an extended, contained thought. It's because sentences aren't necessarily a full thought. They are a full independent clause structure, which may be a full statement. It's just the problem is when you have sentences that are so short that they don't form a complete thought. You have to try and figure out which sentences belong to which sentences. That's when you get into paragraphs, if permitted, bullet points, if permitted, etc. So the closer you get to having a sentence with a complete thought, which can join up with other sentences that have complete thoughts, or as complete as you could get, which join into paragraphs of complete concepts, the better it is for the writing. And this bears repeating. Even with technical writing, you often have to combine independent clauses to form single sentences for the purpose of an extended, contained thought. Now, contained thought is not necessarily a complete thought. Make sure you remember that. We're not going to go into that today, but that's an important point. The reality is, it's all up to what the intent is with the writer and or the performance. Here are some additional ways this can be edited. I don't even know what this place is. Period, period, period. Maybe a fourth period. Why would we live here? So, I don't even know what this place is. Why would we live here? You can have a tonal shift, as I mentioned earlier, with an extended pause, which is better than just a single period. Intonation of a trailing thought, coupled with a question to the universe. That's basically what I just did. I don't even know what this place is. Why would we live here? See, there's a completely different tone, almost as if I'm talking to myself. Here's another example. I don't even know what this place is. Why would we live here? Harsh, sarcastic, sardonic tone with dismissal and condemnation of past or future decisions after a prolonged pause. Basically, this is you asking a rhetorical question. I don't even know what this place is. Why would we live here? That is not a question. That's a rhetorical question is a statement. So even though you have an inquisitive marker, Why? Even though that's an inquisitive marker, you do not put a question mark if the body, tone, and language states that you are being sarcastic or you're not actually looking for an answer. Well, being sarcastic is, pretty much the same thing, not looking for an answer. But I mean, there is a bit of a difference between, I don't even know what this place is. Why would we live here? And I don't even know what this place is. Why would we live here? You can hear the biting tone different in the first one as opposed to the second one. Here's another one. I don't even know what this place is. Why would we live here? So between the two of them, what you wind up with is one has a period, one has a comma, but the important punctuation is at the end, which informs the reader, no, this is not a question. She does not want an answer. This is a thought that came out, and it is meant only for her. Here's another one. I don't even know what this place is. Why would we live here? If you can tell, I put the question mark with I don't even know what this place is. There's no inquisitive marker there. It looks like it should be a sentence, right? It's a statement. I don't even know what this place is. But I'm putting a question mark there, so I'm creating a juxtaposition of up in contrast to the words. A tonal juxtaposition of up. So it's a tonal up contrasted with the words that have no inquisitive marker. It's very common in day-to-day life, as it dismisses even the thought of the implied question by using a juxtaposed tonal shift down with the follow-up statement of, why would we live here? So let me repeat that again if you didn't catch it. Remember, tonal shift up is inquisitive, tonal shift down is a statement. I don't even know what this place is. Why would we live here? So in that situation, the juxtaposition is against the formal technical rules of grammar. Why would we live here should be a question mark, right? No, because I'm giving a tonal shift down, which indicates that this is a rhetorical question. I don't even know what this place is a question, an implied question or an implicit question, depending on which rules you use, even though and because of a lack of an actual question marker in the first sentence. Here's the second panel. I'm taking all of these. Can I put them in your cart? Okay, now in this example, I basically read it as she said it. As it's written out there, comma. I'm taking all of these. Can I put them in your cart? Actually, that's closer to it. What you can do is you can put an exclamation point instead of comma to create a sentence with, I'm taking all of these. And then put an exclamation point after cart and say, can I put them in your cart? That's not really a question. That matches her body language. If you look, the sentence doesn't even need to be a question. And I'm of the mind to advocate that it shouldn't. If you look at the living behavior of the character, you see she's already got what she wants in her hand and she's moving swiftly to the cart. This is a rhetorical question, which means you don't need any sort of question mark. An exclamation mark is perfect for this, as the exclamation mark brings the tone up as if it were a question, but not quite. Despite the fact she doesn't care what your answer will be, that stuff's going in the cart. I mean, look at her body position. Look at how she's moving. She's not going to take no for an answer. She's going to dump the stuff in the cart. That's not a question. That is a statement. So I advocate that this should actually be changed to either a comma and an exclamation point at the end, or maybe a dual exclamation point question mark at the end, or an exclamation point and an exclamation point. And I say all of this while breaking the one rule from one of my favorite authors, Mark Twain. Samuel Clemens, who said that using an exclamation point is like laughing at your own jokes. Well, I do that too. In fact, I love to do it so much, I toss 2 exclamation points in there for one of my examples. As you can suspect, there are a handful more ways to punctuate that balloon. So let's wrap this up with a final balloon and a thought. Fine, but you're pulling the cart for a while. Or, fine, but you're pulling the cart for a while. The first one I spoke would have had a period. The second one I spoke would have had a comma. I would probably put 3 ellipses after fine, though, allowing for a sigh to be released from the reader and the character. Fine, but you're pulling the cart for a while. That would be an ellipsis, or maybe a secondary balloon. However, I will point out the one actual grammatical error in this sentence. In this whole page, actually, there is one real grammatical error. For a while is a designation of time. This must always have a comma before it, unless you are speaking quickly and don't take a breath. So regardless of how you make the first part of the last sentence, it should always be pulling the cart for a while. I break this rule frequently myself, but I do know the rule exists. So I thought I should at least mention the only actual grammatical error on this page. My summary for this video is this. Punctuation came from breaths. It existed before people described what it was in the first book of grammar. Punctuation has a storied history centuries old, changing places but never changing the purpose. When you write how people speak, how you speak, you are recording for all eternity your very breath. When you read how someone has spoken, you're breathing the same air they breathed when speaking those very lines. Even if only mentally, you're in the same place as that person who spoke and or wrote those words. It's one of the most important things in our lives and our history. Because outside of audio recordings, there has been no other way to record the very nuances of what makes a living language a living language. The very breath of every period, of every comma, of every question, and every exclamation is the life force of those who speak the language. That's why technical editing should rarely, if never, be used for creative endeavors. Because technical editing is for harsh, strict constructs, devoid of deviation or growth. It's made that way for a reason. A very important reason. Creative writing, however, is a record of what makes the language alive. Living languages are only living because someone speaks their words with the emotion and intent as they were written. If you think that sounds like magic, making people feel and breathe what you felt and breathed, it is. It's one of the most fundamental and powerful magics in the universe. This is why I try to emphasize that there are very few wrong ways to creatively write, as long as you properly record the intent of the speaker to the reader. Creative writing serves the soul of humanity. Humanity's soul does not serve creative writing. Now, you may disagree, and I welcome disagreements and other thoughts. This is how I view it, but it's not the end all, and nor am I saying that I'm the only right answer. I may be wrong. From my viewpoint, though, that's the way I view language and editing. Thank you for listening. I hope you have taken this in stride as intended, even if we might disagree. I hope that you enjoyed this video. Thank you.